Tabletops will start after the following messages.
Are you looking for something comfortable to wear and keep your brain warm while playing tabletop games? Daily Dose of Yarn makes handmade, customized beanies for all of your style and comfort needs. She can even help you with a custom beanie to represent your favorite character. Check out Daily Dose of Yarn on Instagram and Etsy to order your new favorite beanie today.
Welcome back to another episode of Tabletopped, everyone. Today we are going to be talking about two heist modules. The first one being Kidnap the Archpriest by Skerples, which is a systemless, settingless heist module with tips on how to build heists. It's about 50 pages long. And the other one is Keys from the Golden Vault from Wizards of the Coast. It's a 5e book you all kind of know. It is 200 pages long, has a bunch of heists in there, and we'll talk about both of them and which one maybe is the more valuable get if you need to or are looking for a module to base an adventure off of. So why don't we start by introducing who's here to discuss these with me. Let's go around the table. Who are you over there?
Once again, I'm Daniel.
I'm Franco.
I'm Shade.
All right,
Okay,
welcome.
Shade. Are you sad, Shade?
We have a sad boy NPR Shade over there.
Yeah.
You know, I've got these feelings all bottled up, and if I could just open up this vault and release them, it would be better.
We have a lich sort of thing happening here, I guess.
Your heart is a vault. Your emotions are your treasure.
Okay. My heart is
Yeah, I
a
don't know.
vault, and you're to blame. Anyway,
We don't have the rights for that, dude.
Yeah, that's why I kept it under 30 seconds.
Yeah, just sing module versus module instead.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so why don't we start with Kidnap the Archpriest? Franco, you brought this to our attention. You've run it before.
This is your fault.
This is your fault. So why don't you kind of give us a rundown, a little bit about Skerples, about this module, about what it entails.
Yeah, Skerples wrote this module, Kidnap the Archpriest. It's just it's super fun. It's a pretty it's a system agnostic settingless module, and the premise is you have to kidnap this Archpriest. You got to get him out of his castle because he's about to leave in 3 days to go to his other castle that it's more well protected. So you have this window. And most of it involves just going around looking for information around town. And there are sort of day by day schedules for the different NPCs. We have sort of Terminator level of guards that are walking around. I ran this for 6th level players, and the guards that I used were actually Devas, which I think are CR 10 or 12 or something like that.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it was pretty brutal. They actually got a hit in, and it was I had it be it was a war mace. It was a D6 plus D4D8 of radiant damage.
Jeez.
And
so
none of that radiant damage did shit against a diva, I imagine.
Oh no, that's the damage that they did on the player.
I'm sorry.
That got hit, or the character that got hit. It's got it's pretty agnostic fully. It's got a ton of random tables and tools and stuff. It has a schedule for each one of the major NPCs, and also has an alternative table if you want to just make it up on the fly. And it's just a lot of tools and even additional schemes just in case players get stuck. And then the tools were a lot of the tools are just you might not even end up using them, but they're all just there in case they're going to talk to this NPC or that NPC. So pretty long, and compared to the length of there's 13 adventures in Keys from the Golden Vault, and they're much shorter, just because of that. But I don't know why, but it's just I think because of the sandboxy vibe, it is just a bigger book, Yeah.
I think that the thing that I was really impressed with when I looked at the Kidnap the Archmage is that it really does a lot of the prep for you, where it's
totally.
like essentially like these are the 3 characters that you can use to have information that are interesting in this location, in this location, and this location. These are the schedule that if you want to like really be granular about time, this is where they are during those times. And it has like even a thing about like when they're trying to prep items, like how long it will take for that to happen and what resources they have to expend. I feel like it does do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the prep part of the heist, which is probably the hardest to make the most interesting if you're a kind of a brand new GM and don't really know how to prep something like that.
Yeah.
It can kind of feel like a shopping episode, and this kind of avoids that a little bit and allows it to be a little bit more adventure-y.
And like you were saying, it's like in the very first page, it highly recommends like this should not be your first adventure that you run as a GM.
I also think it has a, like you and I were talking about this earlier too. Like I just mentioned how it's cool that they have the schedule and everything, but it also has ways for you to like get away from that kind of level
like if you don't
of
wanna,
detail.
Yeah.
And allows you to say like, okay, if you don't want to use the schedule, these are the general things that you can use to kind of roll for. Shade, Daniel, what about you guys when you are playing stuff like this? Do you find the like tables and stuff like this to be really helpful? Do you like the level of kind of detail that this sort of thing goes into, or are you sort of more like I'll build that part myself when you're running a
I've always been more like of an improvisational DM. So I'll have prompts and some stuff, but I often find that having a bunch of tables in the game kind of slows me down. It's like, let me just roll against and see what's here. I don't like doing it, so I don't really.
I never used any of the tables.
Really?
Yeah, when I ran it, I didn't really use any of the tables at all. I don't think there's really that many aside from like you can do like random encounters if you want.
Yeah.
Like if they're like kind of around town and they're kind of like doing weird shit, like you can do that. When I ran it for you two, I did that. I think just because
you want to test
You
it
two
out.
being
Yeah,
Daniel and me.
Yeah, Daniel and Shade when I ran it for you like a little bit. When I ran it for the other people for 5e, they didn't do that as much. They had like very specific ideas of what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
But otherwise I never rolled a table at the tape. I never rolled on a table at the table when I was running it. But you can, it's there if you're the type of person that likes to run random encounters.
Sure.
Like in the city.
I like a table when it's very specific use. So if I'm random encounter tables, I'm not such a big fan for, but if I need to determine like this is the layout of the place that we're going to be robbing, and I determine where are the guards right now. Yeah, that's a great little thing for the table. Or what are the guards doing right now? Something like that. I do like those. I think for a heist, I'm more prone to, or more likely to utilize those, just because I like the kind of play between the rigid structure and the feeling of improvisation there. It also kind of creates a level of tension, because especially if you're doing open rolls, things like that.
Always open roll.
Yeah, always. I'm a big advocate for open rolls, but I guess that would require an open table though, so maybe matters a lot less here. But I like for them to not just think, he decided that the guard was in this room at this time.
Right,
no, I like for them to have some. Nope, that's just fate.
Yeah, there was I did roll some random encounters at some point, but I mostly just used the D6 to see if they would run into a guard. Yeah. Like when they were like running away through the streets and stuff. And I told them that's what was going to happen. I had them like they were like, okay, we're going to run for like an hour. I was like, okay, like every 20 minutes you might run into somebody, and I'm going to roll these 3d6 in front of you. If it lands on a 1, one of these Terminator guards will show up and will be like 10 feet away from you or something like that. Yep. And the amount of tension every time I rolled those, it was great.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about, so the author says this is like shouldn't be your first time doing a game or whatever. Can you talk a little bit about why that is within the module?
Heists are hard. I think heists are really hard to pull off effectively. I think you have to have a level of confidence in your ability to improvise. A lot of the things that I had to improvise a lot of stuff on the fly.
Yeah.
Steven's character, who was a cleric, was like, I want to find like a house of healing. That's not in the module.
Yeah.
And somebody else had a smuggler background. They're like, I want to find a safe house.
Yeah.
Because it's in my background. I can just find a safe house. I'm like, okay, great. I make that up.
Yeah.
And then I gave them like another plot hook when they meet like some smugglers that already work there, and they're gonna go find an exotic animal at some point. So like stuff like that where you just have to improv. Oh, they went into they basically started a riot because there was a festival, and they were like, okay, we're gonna plan to start a riot. The Archpriest is gonna show up at this festival. Like people say that he's gonna show up there. It was already in the module that he's not gonna show up to the festival. He's gonna be sight unseen until he departs for his like secret castle.
Yeah.
And so when that happened, I was like, okay, I have to come up with crowd crush rules.
Yeah.
When they start this riot.
Yeah.
And so like stuff like that,
It's just a little harder for
it's hard. Yeah. It should not be your first module.
Yeah. And also another thing I wanted to ask, because you said it might have been off mic, but that this took 4 sessions to come to a conclusion.
Yes.
Can you kind of talk about the makeup of the module? So like, did you spend the first session introducing the idea, the second session like planning the heist, and then the last 2 doing it, or like how did that breakdown work?
I believe the first episode was sort of like, I kind of forget, maybe it was 2 in person and 2 online, and the first 2 were kind of them debating whether they should do it at all. Because the quest giver was very evil.
Sure.
And that's not really, that was all me, right? Like that was just like me trying to introduce this module.
I wouldn't
into
call you evil, dude. Huh? I wouldn't call you evil.
Yeah.
Flawed maybe. But...
and so they were kind of debating that. They had a couple of irons in the fire as far as like finding information. The second episode, they ended right before the riot. The third episode total, they ended right before the riot, and the online sessions were a lot shorter. They ended right before the riot started, and then the 4th episode they wrapped it all up. Yeah. Oh, actually, no. It was another. It must have been, I think it was still 4 sessions total, but it was they ended right before the riot, and then afterwards they ended right before they were going to break into the Archbishop's room and get him.
Right.
I made him an archbishop, and the party was split as well.
Right.
And so there were these 2 parties, and then the last episode, the last session that we ran, it was them getting the archbishop and then escaping. And that whole thing took, and then at the end of it, we ended with them like leaving the city, which there was a huge ass fucking riot. And I think you could easily do it in like 2 sessions or 1 session for sure.
Sure.
I think the information gathering part of it is sort of built in. I think the difference with the keys from the Golden Vault is that they're much shorter. And so I think that probably will make it so that those modules will probably run much shorter. I think.
Yeah. Speaking of the keys to the Golden Vault, Shade, why don't you talk a little bit give us an introduction into what is in this book, what is the book, all that kind of stuff.
Released February 21st, 2023.
Okay, not that much.
Okay. So it's an official Wizards product. It was released, I did say the date because it was released right in the midst of all the OGL debacle.
Yeah, and it also has kind of a negative, like people's opinion towards this module are fairly negative online. I think that maybe it was because of that.
I think if you look at reviewers, it's less negative, but there definitely is a...
reviews were fairly positive.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay.
I would support those reviews. I'll just say right out the gate here. So there are 13 modules in this. There's a little bit of it's setting agnostic. Obviously, it's 5th edition. Although I would argue, honestly, you could take these
you could do anything,
apply them anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you could do anything with anything.
Yeah, you can absolutely. That's the fun thing of your imagination. But no, there's nothing in here that immediately made me go, okay, this has to be 5th edition because this only exists there. I could easily, kibash it somewhere else. But it's meant for 4 to 6 players. And the adventures are arranged based on level. It ranges from levels 1 through 11, and there are 2 5th level adventures or heists and 2 8th level heists. And I will say I'm kind of utilizing the word adventure here, not only because that's just kind of a standard thing I might do, but because some of these heists do miss the mark, on my opinion. They're, I think everything in here, there's lots of fun to be had personally, but there are a few that I'm like, that's not a heist at all. That's
couple train robberies.
Yeah, so
The train robbery.
There is a train
I have a lot
heist.
of opinions about that one.
There is a train heist in this. I want to love it for every possible reason in it. It is a train that's ran by Mechanus. It's going to the outer plane of Mechanus, and it is traveling through planes.
But it has no timetable or schedule.
Well, I would argue, though, that it's up to you, the DM. Now, they should have established
But they
one
should have
clearly.
said that.
They should have established it clearly.
Watsy loves not giving people tools.
Yep, I do agree. But not all of them are like that. But obviously, it's going to Mechanus. Mechanus is its next and last stop. You should kind of set the timetable there. But there's other stuff going on that one that's like, this is leaning more towards an adventure than a heist. And there are a few like that. But there are a few that are really great heists.
Can I ask about this? Since there are so many different heists and adventures in here, is it something that you have to do all together? Like it's one story going all the way through? Or?
You certainly can. They give you the tools or kind of the background information for how to connect it. Franco and I were talking about this off mic. He felt this is very cheesy, and I said, I know it's cheesy, but I love this.
Yeah, I mean, Dungeons and Dragons is very cheesy, so
it's keys.
Wasn't for me.
So when the Golden Vault that's referred here are actually... it's an organization. It's a secretive organization that's based somewhere on one of the good aligned outer planes, and its members, and they are probably associated with metallic dragons, and it's like a altruistic thieves guild essentially. And the way that the
Robin Hoods,
and the way that they work is they give their operatives these chests, and someone will show up with a key to the chest, give you the key, you put it in, and then a hello operatives, your mission should you choose to accept it kind of thing, and then the key vanishes.
Self-destructs.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the key vanishes. Yeah, and
so is it kind of like, and that's why some of them are adventures and not heists?
No, that's just because that's just the way that it panned out. Yeah,
cool.
Somebody, they didn't read the assignment.
Yeah,
some of them.
so like, and they do talk about this. Not to justify it, but for what it's worth, in the intro section, they do kind of talk about like, all of these are heists in that you're going after a MacGuffin. They actually use the word MacGuffin, which or as Daniel likes, McGruffin. Which I really appreciated.
Classic callback.
Yeah. that they did say that. But just because you're going after an item doesn't make it a heist.
Does not a heist make.
Can you talk a little bit about the length? So we talked with Capture the Archpriest. Yep. It takes, it can take a little bit longer. You can maybe run it like very quickly if you wanted to, but like each of these adventures we were mentioning were a little bit more snack size. Like can you give us a general time frame of like how long it would take to run one of these and all that kind of thing?
I full disclosure have not run any of these. I do intend to, but I've got some DMing under my belt. I would say that each of these should be 1 to 2 sessions max. You can spin things out from them, but if your players went over 8 hours in this, wild to me.
Yeah, I think one. I also read it. I think one thing about. I think one reason that might be though is because Kidnap the Archpriest, the information gathering portion of a lot of the adventure, is like, it might be a really big part of it.
Sure.
And I found that in the Keys to the Golden Vault, a lot of times it wasn't like the information wasn't always handed to you, but a lot of times it was like there wasn't a lot of information that you needed to really get.
Like
so I think
a dossier sort of
thing.
thing.
Well, sometimes you get a dossier, but also sometimes you like like the information might be like kind of obvious or like fairly easy to get, just fewer NPCs to talk to.
Sure.
And that's not like a knock on it or anything.
No.
But I think there's just like, I think
More
that's
streamlined.
why it runs faster. And for some of the adventures, they literally just tell you everything you need to know and then you go.
Yeah, for the most, like there's
Which I have criticisms about those ones.
Those
but
are the
yeah.
ones that are definitely more in the
Adventure.
adventure section, I would say. The ones that are actually heists, you know, there is always like you don't have to run it with the golden vaults. There doesn't have to be like that. They give you explanations of like, okay, well, you know, maybe here's a few other ways to hook them in, and that's nice. There's always someone that you start off with. There's someone that you're heisting on behalf of. It's not really for none of these really have you heisting because you're like, oh, I want to steal this item. And that person is going to give some exposition. And that exposition may or may not be accurate, may or may not be complete.
Yeah, and that's very fun.
Yeah.
I think that's a crucial little element to have in some of these like incomplete information
or like faulty narrators. Or
yeah,
whatever.
faulty narrative. It's great.
And I think that
tool.
Along with that, the ones that really shine as true heists to me, because I do agree with you, Franco, here, that are the ones where if you're not casing the joint and really kind of making a plan, it's not a heist.
Yeah.
You need to be doing those things. If it is, oh, adventurer, I need you to go in and recover this MacGuffin that will save my city.
This is exactly the window you should go into.
Yeah, that's just...
Are you saying that there's a line between the heist and a fetch quest going on in this book?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
There's another, it was like that one where like somebody just tells you like straight up like this is the window to go into, or the other one where it's like, okay, you're going in and you're gonna be replacement cooks and servants or whatever.
So that one I actually think is an actual heist because
I think it is too, but I think like I think it's maybe just like
too pre-planned.
Well, like I mean, they give you this idea, which is like that's fine, and it still works as a heist because it's like it's the prison break one, prison
Revel's
13.
End.
Yeah, Revel's End.
Or prison. You're right. Prisoner 13 is the title, but you're breaking out of prisons or Revel's
End. But like I feel like a really fun part of the heist is learning how to break in, right?
Yeah.
Which is but like kind of getting out of the warden's office, I guess, could be that break in kind of thing. But
it really does depend. So like with that one, Prisoner 13, the goal there is to talk with this prisoner who knows how to unseal a vault elsewhere. The trick is how do you get that information from the prisoner who is a dwarf and who has been for an extended period of time.
A dwarf.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, has always been a dwarf.
But has been for an extended period of time in this prison and has refused to provide this information in the past under duress and all sorts of things. What are you going to do to actually give them that information? How are you going to get it? And how are you going to do it without alerting the warden and the guards that you are not who you say you are? And they do have some alternatives where you don't have to go in as staff. Like it does say you can literally walk up to the door and give a sob story and like figure out other ways to get in.
Are you allowed to scale the walls and break in?
So
and shit like that?
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that, but there's certainly nothing that would stop you. I think it does give you a fair amount of tools for that.
Yeah. So before we really dive into the specifics of each thing, would you say that this is more of a Candlekeep Mysteries rather than like a Ravenloft, like when it comes to book?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's less long thing and more a bunch of different things that you can kind of pick and choose which ones you want to put into a campaign.
It's in the exact same vein as Candlekeep Mysteries, which also had things that were mysteries and things that were just adventures, and in the same vein as Radiant Citadel.
Which had adventures that were also adventures.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. That's a great introduction to both of these. Right after this break, we're going to really break down and review both of these, the faults, the way that they really stand up on their own, and we'll talk about which one maybe that we would direct people to and why. So we'll be back right after these messages.
All right, guys. What do we want to talk about for the commercial?
Maybe the hot dog is a sandwich kind of a thing?
No, that's stupid, man. Everyone knows a hot dog is not a sandwich.
All right. What do you want to do then?
let's talk about what everybody wants to talk about, UFOs.
So my toilet Mike Tyson was telling me the other day that you can survive a zombie apocalypse in a PetSmart.
Dude, are you okay?
Yeah, what was that?
I'm sorry. I don't even know what's happening right now. I've been listening to our podcast a lot recently, and it's a ton. What's going on?
All right, I'm just going to make this easy. Hey, y'all, we are the hosts of Master and Debaters, the podcast that debates all of life's silly questions. Join us every week as we present our hardest opinions on the softest topics. I'm Puck, and football is the worst sport.
I'm Alex, and a hot dog is absolutely a sandwich.
I'm Spencer, and the Beatles suck.
This is Master and Debaters. Find us wherever you get podcasts, and as always, stay mad.
Welcome back, everyone, to our heist module episode of Tabletop.
Module versus module.
Yeah, module versus module. That'd be an awesome podcast. Maybe people should look up something similar, like, I don't know.
I'd prefer to listen to movies against movies.
Oh, yeah,
something
that'd be cool,
that.
like a movie versus
talkies
movie.
versus talkies.
Yes, no, that's the way to go.
Yeah, I'm rating my favorite talkies. I like the red flavor.
Anyway, so for people who don't know, there's another podcast that we all sort of make called Movie versus Movie.
I mean,
That's
we haven't
very
been on it
generous.
yet.
Nick
Very,
makes this.
Yeah,
I've never appeared
never
on movie
been on
versus
it.
movie.
I'll get y'all on there
we
eventually.
occasionally listen to it.
We have plans. So anyway, I will say we have
Occasionally
been.
listen to it.
So we've been talking about two modules, Kidnap the Archpriest by Skerples, and we've been talking about Keys to the Golden Vault by WotC. So in the past, the past segment, we just sort of talked about the basic overview of these. We started to get into some of the places where we think it doesn't measure up or things that like are different about either of them. But why don't we really delve into this? Both Franco and Shade, who are sort of our resident
People
experts.
that did the homework.
Yeah, the people who knew the assignment.
Wow.
I'm just joshing y'all. Shit.
Hey, Josh is in here? Where is he?
Hate that guy. Hate
I
Josh.
hate that guy. Why don't you guys give us, your panel, Daniel and I, the pitch for why your module is the more like solid heist module.
I mean, I thought Keys from the Golden Vault was fine.
No,
Yeah,
you're on Team Skerples.
I mean, I guess I am. I ran it and I liked it.
We're pitting you against each
No,
other.
that's
This is
this is
basic
just-
debate club rules.
I don't like
Just
it.
for
Earlier
fun.
they
This
said
isn't-
that I can't kill player characters, so let me practice.
Okay.
This isn't so much for like why the other one sucks. It's more like what do you think is the best parts of the ones that you were sort of in charge of reading for, and we can kind of talk about that, and then maybe we can talk about what we wish both of these modules had, and we'll give our audience sort of a general score of like, hey, this is like a great module to have in your library, or maybe this one is good, but you can maybe
Is it a
miss or
steal or is it a cash grab?
Is it a robbery or is it a heist? Yes.
Am I allowed to say nice things about Keys from the Golden Vault?
Yeah, of course.
I will say nice things
allowed to.
about Skerples.
I'm just assigning that in this quick pitch for like what is great
Okay,
about the
I'll go
Skerples
first.
one. What do you think?
Great. Skerples did a great job. It's a
Skerples.
Skerples. Kidnap the Archpriest. I think it's got a lot of tools. Every tool. I think one of my favorite things about it is that it has a little bit at the end where it kind of shows you how to build a module like this one. I think that's a great thing to have. I think it has a lot of tools in the game, in the module itself, to like set you up for success for like building something similar or doing whatever. The timetables for each of the NPCs, I thought it was, I think the thing about heists is that they're so information dense that it's great to have them as a reference point. And what I did was I printed out like some of the pages. Like I printed out like 2 booklets basically of just like, this is the town and this is the castle, the inside of the castle. So like I printed those both out and I used those as reference points. Like having all of it sort of like easily referenceable, like the way it's laid out is very good. And helpful, and something that I have a criticism about with Keys from the Golden Vault. Sure. Like even though we were looking at the online version when we were reading it, I think a lot of WotC's books tend to not have sort of like a control panel design, which is like a sort of like you want to use it as a reference book, right, Danny? Like when you were running like Curse of Strahd, like you had to make a bunch of notes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's like not the fastest to interface.
Yeah. And I think like all of the rooms in the castle that you're heisting from like have just like bulleted lists here's who's there on what day. And it would just say like, the cook is here on day 2 at hour 16 to 17.
Yeah.
And like, that's it. Like just like little notes, and you're just easily referencing things. I'm like, oh, what time is it? Here it is. Okay, you're good.
The thing I really liked about this module when I read through it was that, like you said, it is a toolbox.
Yes.
It's not telling you how to run anything. It is
Right.
literally like,
I didn't use all the tools.
yeah, and you don't even really have to use the skin that these tools are in either.
Oh, yeah,
you
yeah.
can totally just like throw that away and do something else.
One of my favorite bits was like in the beginning. It says like, you don't have to kidnap the Archpriest. You can kidnap a billionaire from his condo or something.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I really like the list of like, here's other ways you can do this
The genres,
without doing
that's cool.
the genres.
Like it said, like horror, sci-fi. You find an abandoned ship that you're exploring or
man.
something. Very cool.
So scary.
Yeah, and I so in that way, I really enjoy this type of module that's out there. That's
right.
like very tool heavy, very like table heavy, very like with these tools you can edit in any way, and you can basically run whatever you're going to want. So it's much more flexible, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think that flexibility is its main strength. And I think like, again, as I said, like you have to be an experienced DM to run this. Like I was running it for 5e, and it says at some point like if invisibility cloaks are common in your world, make sure that the guards can see through invisibility.
Sure, yeah.
And it's like, yeah, great, because they did something like one of the characters disguised himself as one of the Terminator guards. Like there's like the regular guards, and then there's like these like Terminator guards that are like intense. And I was like, okay, they have true sight. And so like one of them was going around pretending to be one of these guys who was like hated, right? They're all like hated and stuff in town. And immediately gets like fucking whacked because like, hey, I can see through your disguise, and I can see that you are disguised.
Yeah.
I think like having all of these like tools and stuff, it's like it's a little different, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's, if you're like a more experienced DM, if you've run like a couple of adventures, I would definitely recommend checking it out to see like different ways to use like tools and modules that like, I feel like WotC doesn't really do this type of thing at all, ever. I found Keys from the Golden Vault to be like really, I don't know, like not, I feel like I said didactic and that wasn't the right word. Like kind of prescriptive with some of the things that it was trying to say, you know, and like a lot of description, a lot of the rooms and a lot of the places and stuff have a lot of text.
Sure.
Where, again, you're running a heist. It's very information heavy. Like you want to get to that information. I want a bulleted list.
Yeah.
You know, and I want stat blocks actually. Like I don't know, maybe in the printed book there's like stat blocks nearby when you have them out. But it's like, I mean, the saving grace is really that they're all really short.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
I think it's very helpful.
Before we continue too far into that, and thank you for the pitch on the Skerples module, Shade, I want to throw it over to you. Can you give us the best pitch you have for
OGL apologist
for Keys to the Golden Vault, and then we can sort of get into a little bit more of what you were just doing of like, let's talk about these in a sort of freewheeling way of which ones, where do they fall short and stuff.
I prefer to consider myself just creatively common.
Gross.
Everyone hated
Why
that.
are you wearing that Hasbro shirt?
I don't know.
Why does it say staff?
Why does it say Dungeons and Dragons by Hasbro?
No, I mean, this particular book is, when I first skimmed through this, when it first came out, you know, I was kind of in a salty mood because of the OGL stuff. I was also extremely busy with a billion other things, and it wasn't until really the last week or so that I got a chance to read through this in more earnest. My first kind of glance through, I was like, oh man, this is awfully information dense, which sounds like a really stupid thing to complain about when you think about the fact that
I don't think it is.
Well, I mean, but a lot of people will say things like, oh, Wizards doesn't actually give you information, doesn't actually give you tools and things like that. And so then if you go, oh, I have to read, that sounds kind of contrary.
Sure.
So I do want to acknowledge that argument before anyone gets at me somewhere in a comment.
Get in the comments.
And
Get him. Yeah.
so, you know, I kind of looked at that. I was like, oh, man, that seems like a lot. Because like you, I want a bulleted list for a heist. I want to be able to quickly refer to things. But as I really dove into each of these, I didn't really find that, and by virtue of the fact that they are fairly short, I didn't really find that to be the case. I found it to be a pretty well-organized book. It doesn't, however, give me very much in the way of, building out my own heist or anything like that, which I think would have been a great section to add to this book. I think there's no adventure in here that I wouldn't want to run in one of my games in some capacity. There are a good 3 or 4, maybe 5 that I'm like, that is not a heist, but it is a fun adventure.
That's half.
No, it's 13. So it's under half.
By 1.
By a few.
It's 13 adventures. 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's 8 that are heists.
It's like a third.
Yeah,
Like a third.
Okay.
Anyway,
This is let's move out of our Daniel struggles with math.
yeah, I was bad at math previously, so it's all good. Remember when I said in our movie episode that 90 minutes is the same as 100?
Wow, that was embarrassing.
Yeah, that was really embarrassing.
Yeah, you must feel so bad about that.
I
still.
did. I
I feel
awful.
great about mine because I feel you are being pedantic. But that's all right.
I feel like I have a better grasp on math than
Damn.
Anyway, they could be heists, but they lean more towards adventures, is what I would say. The ones that are heists, there are just some real good moments in here. I think that you will walk away feeling like, oh man, that was a classic like Ocean's 11 kind of heist, the kind that is fun and bubbly and has the montage music.
The only heist movie we know.
Yeah,
Ocean's
I mean, it's the only good one. That can't be true.
It's not like those Grim Dower ones where I have to do this.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of my elevator pitch for this.
One thing I also really loved about it was the art.
Yeah.
Of course, like they always got good art.
Interesting
and
that
the player versions of the maps are
Yes.
super fun.
So
like having like the sort of like, here's a little junky thing that somebody wrote on the back of it and handed to the player. Like that's awesome.
it was so I want to talk about those points. So again, I really like the cheesy element of the keys and the golden vault. They have an image for every one of those keys. I love those keys. They look fantastic. The art was really divisive in the community on this because some of this art is great. Some of it is fine in my opinion, but it's one of those programs where you're just like posing some 3D models and things like that, and it's not actually like rendered. And so some people were really salty about that when this first released.
I don't know which one it is now.
So it's the casino one. The Stygian Gambit has one of those images. I remember that, and then another one that I can't recall off the top of my head.
Well, I'll let you know if I find it.
Yeah, but Stygian Gambit.
Was it the first one?
No. First one, I think.
The first one, I don't love it.
Okay.
That's fine. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
This is nothing.
Anyway, but the player, so one of the cool things about this, it does give you those player maps, and then you also have the DM maps. In each of these heists is also a tool of some sort that is great for heists in general. We have already talked a little bit about Prisoner 13, which is, I think, Chapter 3. That has a wonderful system for when the guards are getting suspicious and
the alarm mechanic.
Yeah, the alarm mechanic. And I loved it. I thought that was so cool. There are a few other great little mechanics for tracking time and tracking pressure in this book. It's just a shame that they aren't gathered together somewhere as a resource.
Right. That would be nice.
All right, so now let's start talking a little bit more critically about both of these. Shade, you actually made like before we move off of it, actually, you made sort of a review system in which you graded all of them. Do you kind of want to run through your top 3?
Each of the golden keys?
My top 3? Yeah, sure. I will tell you top 3 of these
and bottom 3.
Yeah, maybe give. I mean,
okay, yeah,
you don't like talking negative, so we won't force you. But
I will do it. So the top 3 for me were Masterpiece, Imbroglio. Why do I want to do soft G with that? Why is my mind? I know.
Just thinking in Italiano.
I know, but I keep going soft G. Masterpiece, Imbroglio.
Masterpiece, Imbroglio.
It's
Manja.
I love this one because you're stealing from a thieves guild. This is an A+ heist for me. It does everything. So the book does have really kind of 4 things, and I didn't say this earlier, but 4 things that it's aiming to do, and that is
time, currency, information.
kind of, yeah. It's the structure, a narrative structure of mission briefing, planning the heist, executing the heist, and concluding the heist. Not all of them do that. So this one absolutely does. You've got the plan, you've got the execution, and the briefing and the conclusion, of course. A+. There's also just a really great, the item that you're focusing on the heist is just a great item that I want in every single game. I love this item.
What is the item?
What's the
It's
item?
yeah, okay.
It's a painting.
Spoilers, yeah.
Don't read the stat block. It just tells us the painting.
It's a painting. It's a painting that it was made by a spy master, essentially commissioned by a spy master, and it is a sentient painting that absolutely gathers information and has offensive abilities.
That's cool.
Nice.
So it is this wealth of knowledge. I fucking love this painting.
Yeah.
Another A+ was Vitarant's Vault, which is very straightforward and faultless heist. It also is another one where you are stealing from another thieves guild of sorts.
Steal from the thieves.
I think that's a really fun trope, and once again, this one does really do everything it promises with those 4 narrative structures. Mm-hmm. It could do with a bit more risk, in my opinion.
Okay.
Then, my third one. It's going to be a tie between Prisoner 13 and the Murkmire Malevolence. Murkmire Malevolence is
the first one.
Oh, actually, you know what? It's not going to be a tie. Murkmire Malevolence will edge it out a little bit for Prisoner 13. It's the first level adventure. I genuinely think this is one of my favorite first level adventures I have seen in a while.
Ooh, okay.
This has a lot going for it. I am very biased because I was once upon a time, I was a PhD student of archaeology. I was a museum employee. I love Eldritch Horror and heist stuff. I think that's all very fun. And this is the focus of all of this. There's a disgraced archaeologist who knows that something that a museum has purchased recently is actually an egg for an Eldritch Horror.
Eesh.
And no one's listening to them.
And there's a gala that you can go to.
And there's a gala you can go
that.
to. Yeah,
I do love that part about it.
It's so cool. The reason I only give it an A, though, is because it does not have really any of the planning structure. You are given the briefing. You're given tickets to the gala. You're even given the fucking clothes to go to the gala if you need, although you can find your own. And you kind of have to plan on the fly, but there's no sitting down really in planning.
I'm going to just draw your attention to a book I read recently. It's called Nevernights. But it's interesting because they did a scene too with a gala where the main characters were given costumes and keys to get in. And they were like, just go, have fun at the gala. But the actual twist was that it was like, can you get out if your cover is blown? And the people who'd sent them also sent the guards the information that they needed to identify who was in their little sect. So that's a good complication if you're running and you feel like it's not giving you enough information.
Yeah.
If the module gives them too much, take something away when you're running it yourself.
So I will say with this one, because I agree wholeheartedly, take something away so that there's a time limit on this one. The egg is going to hatch with that night, essentially. If you just extend that time limit a little bit and use that gala as a chance for them to get the ins and outs, perfect. This would have been an A+. Yeah. Because then you get a planning section. Least favorite ones are largely for the fact that they're adventures, and that is Reach for the Stars. Straight up, I would give that an F on an American grading structure as far as a heist goes, because it's not a heist. You're told, oh, hey, this guy stole something that he shouldn't have, and he's summoning great evil into the world as a result. I've already sent an adventuring crew, and they've definitely died. Can you maybe try it? Go into his mansion full of just terrible monsters? How is that a heist? It's not a heist.
Yeah.
I'm not going to send a group in there and go...
Well, it's a response to a heist.
Yeah, that's true. The guy stole something already. A very similar one is
Heart of Ashes?
Yeah, I'll say Heart of Ashes. That one, I love this story so much. I think this is an A minus adventure or dungeon, but it's literally a
Dungeon.
dungeon. Yeah, it's a dungeon.
Yeah.
And then same thing really with so many others, but Talkworth's Clockworks I think is a great example of that.
Clockwork.
The one thing that I will give that an A+ for is there is a character named Poots, and that just made me
we love Poots.
That made the little silly child
Poots life
in my mind laugh.
All right, so now we got the lowdown on the keys, but let's talk a little bit more critically about Skerples' work. Franco, are there things where this module kind of falls short, things that you wish it had, or things that it just doesn't quite get over the finish line? Or is it a piece of perfect interactive fiction?
No, I think anything that I didn't really like about it, I kind of just changed.
Yeah.
That's the best part about it, is that it was so flexible that there were like things in it that I didn't like, and I was like, well, I don't like that, so I'm just going to leave it out.
Right. Yeah.
And I think probably, I don't know, it's so malleable that I feel like, the overworld map is not good.
Not good,
You know,
yeah.
it's just like really rudimentary, which is a shame because all the other drawings in it are quite good.
Yeah, they're
like
cool.
the art style is very cool.
It's very medieval.
Yeah, like it looks like it's a like out of a book or something like that. So I think that would be the only thing. That would be the main criticism that I had. Is like, oh, I wish there was a nicer map.
Yeah, I think that
like the overworld map, because the castle map is also quite good.
Yeah. The only thing that I would say, because when I read through it, I was sort of, and like you said, it says like the first paragraph, this is an advanced module. But it is a very, like, I don't know. I read through it and I was like, oh, I could use this. But I was also like, this would be not indecipherable, but so difficult for somebody who just wanted to run a heist to grab and go.
That would be like,
Yeah,
like
it is something you have
use
to. If you are not an advanced GM, you would have to sit with it a while, really familiarize yourself, and then even then it would be a little difficult. Whereas I think that keys are, pick up, go, and if you're a little bit less confident, you can even move more towards the adventure side of things and just kind of run some adventures that have that kind of flavor in it. And Shade, is there anything like really out about the keys other than the fact that some of them are adventures and not heists that you're sort of like, I could have left this out, or this doesn't really work for me?
You don't know. There's nothing that.
Oh, I can.
Well, which one?
Franco.
Please let me know.
I can crack my knuckles on this one. I think there. Let me see. I had a couple. I had a couple of things. There was one. There was one thing that I didn't like that was like kind of at the front, and it said something like, it was like, you can move the MacGuffin around.
Oh, MacGuffin, yeah.
If you want to, like, it says if things are going too smoothly, you can move the MacGuffin or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, why?
Yeah.
Just let their plan work. If they did a good plan, it works. It just annoyed the shit out of me.
Huh.
And there was another one. It's something similar.
Yeah.
So that's why. Sorry.
Yeah.
But like, there was one where it says, if the characters had a relatively easy time getting here, meaning like the place where they're going to get the MacGuffin, add 2 invisible Nikoloths as guards. And I'm just like, why? Why can't they just be rewarded for getting there successfully?
I think that's in the one that I was saying is an adventure.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, but like, it's sort of like, it's also like, why is the GM expected to use judgment on the fly when placing these monsters? What does relatively easily mean? Like, if they had a relatively easy time, like, what does that mean? How do you adjudicate that? And why can't just can the monster just be here or just not be here? I don't know. Like that, like, it kind of irked me a little bit, where it's like I've done this before when I was a younger DM, where I was like, that went too smoothly, let me throw another monster at them or something like that, and then extend this game for another 30 minutes. Like, why? You don't have to make it more complicated. If they're good, if they do a good job, they get thing.
If do good job,
if
then
do good job. Thing.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like trying to teach GMs that you have to punish your player for doing good. Like that's what it reads like to me.
It seems like it's making the adversarial roles kind of stark.
Like it. I think that really bugged me. I think we talked about this before. The lack of time crunches. I wanted more of those. The suspicion mechanic could have been used more often.
Yeah.
And then there's the party at Palisade Hall.
Yeah.
The climax in that one is really assumed. Like you're going to get into that interdimensional shard space and do this. Like it's like assuming this set piece at the end of it. The Concorded Express, the train. Why isn't there a schedule?
Train again, schedule. I mean, so
right. It doesn't give you the tool to create that time crunch.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I think what would have been great is if they created a tool like the alarm mechanic. Great. Mm-hmm. If they wanted to introduce or reintroduce the dungeon turn mechanic or something like that. If they wanted to introduce another time-based mechanic that isn't just combat, because combat is a time-based mechanic or a procedure. It's a procedure with time. If they wanted to introduce something else that is sort of like heist time or whatever, it's like we're going to roll a D6 and we're going to see what happens during this, hour or 20 minutes or 30 minutes of this heist time or whatever. And like how wrong this is going to go and getting closer and closer to that egg hatching or whatever it is. I think a more accurate thing that I could have said is nothing that I haven't already in some fashion touched upon, because some of that we kind of touched. Yeah.
But I would say regarding the first 2 points with the moving MacGuffin, I actually really like that. Because I think heists are full of variables, and there should be it doesn't work for all of them for sure, but I think having we sometimes want in a heist for there to be that pivot moment where it's like the plan didn't come together. Oh no, how are we going to fix this? And being sure that the item is going to be here and then it ends up not being here is frustrating, but could also make for an interesting, what
it happened in the D&D movie.
Which I agree, that's very fun, but
the way it's written, it's written as a punishment, not as a way to make it more interesting.
And like if it was just like, hey, when they get to this, or at this juncture point, or at this part of the adventure, or here in this room, or something like that, roll a d6 and assign a room to that number. And then that's the room where the MacGuffin has moved to for whatever reason. Like maybe it blinks out of space and time and moves over. Or like the simulacrum that's carrying the pendant on her. Like that's great. She's moving all over the place, right? Or she could be. I don't know if she is. I forget. I didn't read the adventure that closely. But there's I agree that moving the MacGuffin around is a great idea, but doing it on the fly like that, I feel like it's kind of weird.
Real quick before we talk, because I want to hear your response, but I just want to say that I love the idea, because in a world of magic, absolutely a security device would be a thing that moves blinks between somebody somewhere out and it moves around. I want to make that adventure.
Yeah, that would be fun. Let's make it.
We're running that actually in Ico Nights. The untethered door is literally that.
Oh yeah.
So the I do agree with you that it does sound adversarial, although I would argue that does exist in Skerples. I don't have an exact example, but there are definite moments, because you said there were just things that you ignored sometimes if you didn't like it. There are definitely a couple of moments in my quick read through of Skerples that I was just like, I mean, that doesn't have to be that way. And it does feel a little bit punishing. But,
I'm trying to think of an example.
I mean, oh gosh, let me see if I can quickly find it. I remember so actually, you know what? You and I were talking about this one, and this is something I think that you just removed in general. It was the two lovers that you walk in. So there's just certain things I guess that's not so much punishing. It's just kind of I don't really like the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's just why can't they just be lovers?
Yeah. But for that particular one, my thought there is it's poorly written, but we were talking off mic about how when stories end, that was the climax of their lives, and then when we were talking about that great after talk for the Never After group, and how the Disney movies always bring them back to whatever it was that they were going through already. Because conflict makes stories, and if your game has not had really any conflict in it, that might be something you might want to, here's now a conflict. It's clumsy. I do agree.
That's what I was actually going to say as well, is that it kind of depends on what your player group wants, where if they want the experience of like, we are masterminds, we got in, we got the thing, and we got out, and nobody even figured it out, we feel like gods. Like, that's awesome. You can run this that way. But if they want that sort of like, oh shit, we're inside of the secure place.
Which one are you referring to?
The one where you move the item around, and that kind of stuff. Like, oh shit, we're in this secure area. We are surrounded. We're like on enemy turf, and the thing is gone. And we need to figure out where it is and get out before we like screw up the plan or something. Yeah. Could be like, if that's what your group wants, that sort of adventure part of it. And but there's like very much different ways you can do that.
But I do definitely agree about like adding 2 invisible enemies, just because this felt too easy.
I'm just gonna say blanket statement, never add enemies. Just adding combat does nothing except extend time. Yeah, it is never a good option.
It's not fun.
Yeah,
especially if you're playing 5e.
Yeah, in 5e, I should say.
And if you're playing some other type of system where like the monster is the trap, the monster is the.
Or if you're going to do that, make it a known role, like you were talking about with the Terminators. That D6, that's a lot of fun. Yeah, that adds tension. That adds like a, oh shit, we thought we were safe and they've now come around the corner.
It also adds a very visible chance to the game, where it's like, I'm not punishing you, but like we never know what's gonna happen, do we? Woo! Roll the dice.
Right. Like maybe you roll 2d6 to see if those 2 Nikoloths are gonna be in that room. Like, sure, but just like tell them like, hey, you know that sporadically Nikoloths will just appear in any room. Yeah. And like every like 20 minutes you just have to roll for that or something like that.
Yeah, and I would also say, as a GM, if I was gonna run that, I would say, these 2d6s represent this. If I roll a 1, 3, or 5, this is going to happen. Anything else, you're fine. And then I roll. And then, like, basically, so that everyone can look and say, oh, shit. Or, like, oh, thank God we got through this. Like, we have dodged the fate bullet.
Another thing, I just thought of this because this is something that Steven mentioned when we ran this heist. He was one of the players in the heist. Another good thing to set up, this is just a philosophical thing and it's not necessarily related to this.
Yeah.
When a character wants to do something, present them with the consequence of failure. Yeah. Like tell them what could happen. Because like me telling them like, I'm going to roll this D6 and the 1 will represent like a Terminator coming around the corner. Like that's a threat. You know, that's like a consequence of you moving through the city quickly with like this like vanguard of people that you're trying to save from this riot. You know, like that's the consequence. And so like being upfront so that they know what all of the possibilities are. I think it's like that transparency of information thing.
Yeah, I also am somebody who, like, there are like dice purists who are like, never fudge a roll, and like that, like I totally respect that. I tend to be like, there are occasions where I'll add or subtract or move things around. But I would say whenever doing these kind of chance encounter rolls, like in this case specifically, something coming around the corner, it's just more fun to roll it open, roll it on the table, and have everyone experience that together. It's just a good time. Before we get too far off base, why don't we kind of get to the end here by telling us our takeaways and whether we would recommend these modules for folks and like maybe who they would recommend them for. Let's start with Skerples. Franco, you brought this to us, Kidnap the Archpriest. I read through it as well. I really enjoy the toolbox that it provides. Like you said, there are some things that I was like, I wouldn't use that either, kind of thing. Yeah. But what are your takeaways, and give us like recommends and where people can find it, how much it costs, and if not, then maybe this is, you know, what you could use from it if you don't want to buy it.
I'll give it 3 stars. The Franco Michelin system. 3 stars is the most you can get. I think it's perfect for what it is. I would definitely buy it. It's like $7 on DriveThruRPG. Yeah, like you might as well. It has a lot of good toolkits for making heists too, and I think that's like maybe the best thing you can get out of it.
A lot of value there.
Yeah, ton of value.
Okay. Then what about you, Shade? Keys from the Golden Vault.
Yep.
Same sort of idea.
You know, it's Wizards of the Coast. You can find it wherever you get your Wizards products. I will give it a 47 stars out of 50 on the
shade scale, the Shade constellation scale.
The patriotic scale, 50 stars.
No, I don't know. I don't really like ranking things quite like that, but I would say this is a solid book. If you're still playing D&D, even if you're not, because this is applicable, I think, to you could take it to other systems. There's some fun heists and adventures in here, and I would recommend it for anyone because it does have introductory heists all the way up to not really high level, but 11th level at least.
The thing that I will say about both of these, and something that I really enjoy about them, but something I will warn people away from as well, is like, if you're looking for, I want to run Curse of Strahd, like a campaign that is this thing, like the Skerples thing probably is not going to be your.
Well, yeah,
it's just like kind of a one-off.
It's
sort of
like buying
adventure.
Death House.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then same with the keys.
Even though you can link them together.
Yeah, even though you can link them together, I think that they shine as individual things.
Yeah.
I don't really.
I feel like the idea of like just getting a bunch of missions one after the other just doesn't feel dynamic.
Yeah, and it also doesn't provide a lot of variety when it comes to everything.
I was thinking that this book would pair well with the Acquisitions Incorporated book.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
Where you're just playing as a group that takes these odd jobs.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
And Shade, I want to say this is nothing against the actual module. I think it's one of the stronger ones. Like, I also like Candle Key Mysteries.
He didn't write it.
I didn't write it.
I also
he doesn't have a horse in this race.
I also love like Candlekeep Mysteries, which I think is like a close like kind of
it's similar,
related. And I just think that depending on who you are, what you want, this is like a great book to have to pull something out of and put into your campaign if you're running your own thing. But I think there are just better options if you're looking for like something that runs,
if you need something that's going to run as a fluid campaign. And you don't want it to be odd job based. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I want to give my star rating for Golden Vault because I also read it.
All right, let's do it.
It's going to be a 2 out of 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it. It's not out of.
Yeah.
It's just you get
2 stars.
you're awarded the star.
3 maximum.
You're not. Yeah.
I mean, it's still got some stars, right?
Yeah. I thought about it at first. I was like 1 star, and then I was like, actually, I'll give it 2 stars. I think it's an exemplar of its genre.
Yeah.
Of like a set of adventures that are sort of like, they're good. I mean, they seem like perfectly good. I love the themes of a lot of them. Like the concepts are really great. I would probably just like hack the shit out of that though.
Oh yeah.
Like and I think that's kind of a shame. Maybe that's probably why I gave it 1 star initially. But yeah, I feel like I would just need to hack the shit out of the adventures for them to feel like they would work.
Clarify what you mean by hack here.
I feel like I would have to like, I don't know.
Modify.
I'd have to not modify it. I'd have to make so many notes and make something like usable. And I would want to introduce the sort of information gathering aspect that I think is really fun for a heist. But if I just wanted to run some of these as adventures, I could just do that out of the box. That's fine. But if I wanted to think about them as heists and like you were saying, like with your grading system of like scoring them, like that's what I want to do.
One thing that I think that the Keys shines in that maybe Skerples doesn't as much is that how widely applicable they can be. Like if you're running sort of like a Call of Cthulhu-esque campaign, like that
there
one.
are
guess, but
like 2 to 3 in this game that are great for far realm
like
stuff.
Out of the box.
Yeah, exactly.
Out of the box.
Out of the box. I'm even like, for me, basically where I come down on these two is that Keys, if you're a beginner through advanced DM, is very valuable.
Yeah.
Kidnapping the Archpriest is a medium to advanced level module that you can like get a ton of value out of if you're those two. But if you're a beginner, might be a little bit tougher.
Sure. Yeah.
Great. So both of these seem like either a buy or get in some way. I also really enjoyed talking to you guys about them. So thank you so much. Any last thoughts about these modules or heists or whatever?
No.
I was hoping we just stayed silent the whole time. I was trying.
Amazing. All right, everybody. Tabletopped is a member of the Helios Network. You might be asking, what is the Helios Network? Well, let me tell you, it is a network of podcasts made by normal people for normal people. And you can check out some of our fellow podcasts in the network, like Banter and Such, a movie and culture podcast where they talk about different things that they are watching, reading, seeing, and really delve deep into them. And if you're interested in other things within the sort of tabletop Nick Perrin family, you can also check out Movie versus Movie, a really fun little podcast I do where we just take two movies and we talk about them. All right, everyone, thanks so much, and I hope may the heist be with you. Okay, bye.
Bye.